start out this webinar by looking at the weather and the outlook for the next 3 months, and then also a bit of a sneak peek of the upcoming fall season. And here's a quick section content where we're going to go over now over the next 10 minutes or so. We'll start with an executive summary, and then we'll go into the background on how we're doing these long-range forecasts at StormGeo. And finally, we'll end with an outlook month to month for the next 3 months, and then also the autumn season. And we have split up the European region in two. So we have the Nordic region and the Conti region. And to be able to summarize the weather for the next several months in just a few sentences for these two regions is difficult, right? But we try to do it in a couple of sentences. So for the Nordic, we do believe the next 3 months will be warmer than average, temperatures above what's typical. Precipitation-wise, it's a lot more difficult. Mixed signals, but normal to perhaps slightly wet for July and August is our main expectation here. For the Conti, warm signals as well, temperatures above average with a high chance or risk of heat waves and prolonged period of dryness perhaps as well, with a slightly dry signal for at least Central Europe when you sum up the 3-month period as a whole. So this is what I'm presenting today is a summary of our Foresight 180, and this is a monthly report we produce during the mid to end of the month, where we give an outlook, an ultra long outlook for the next 180 days. This is created by our energy meteorologists, a team that's sitting in Bergen. Many of you are probably already familiar with them from our daily weather briefings. And this Foresight 180 is available in the Nena portal under Advanced Weather. Okay, we're going to take a step back and actually look at what's behind these forecasts. So I often explain it as the pieces of the forecast puzzle. We're looking at different components when we're trying to make sense of what the next few months might look like. The first piece are they're the teleconnections. Then we have our analog years, and finally looking at our weather models. So we're going to look into each and every one of them coming up now. And we'll start with our teleconnections. So this is also often called our climate drivers. So looking at what's steering the climate, these are often big global weather patterns that can give us clues of what's coming the next few weeks and months. And one of the teleconnections climate drivers that have been brought up a lot in media over the past several weeks that I'm sure you're all aware of is El Nino and its opposite face, La Nina. And this has to do with the ocean temperatures in the Western Pacific Ocean and impacts the global weather pattern. And we have now moved from a 3-year period of La Nina to an El Nino. And El Nino often has a warming effect on the global temperature. So already now there's talks about perhaps a warm 2024 on a global scale. No El Nino is alike. They're all different from each other. So it's hard to say exactly what's going to happen. And Europe as a region isn't as impacted from El Nino as other parts of the world. But we are seeing the potential for some stronger signals of El Nino being a bigger player in the European region this fall. The other piece of the puzzle is our analog years. So analog years are years that have a similar atmospheric setup to what we're currently experiencing, that can then also give us hints of what could come over the next several weeks. And for July and August, so the rest of the summer period, we don't have any obvious analog years. So that makes the forecast a bit tricky. But for the autumn season, we have chosen 1991 as our main analog years. And the autumn or fall 1991 for the Nordic region had a wet September and November and a dry October. And temperatures were right around average. For the Conti region, September was wet during 1991, but October was dry while slightly wet again in November. We had a warm September and slightly cool October and November. So we've now looked at our analog years and our teleconnections, and then the last piece that's very important is actually looking at the models. What are the models saying? And here's a summary over the next 3 months, where we have precipitation anomaly at the top and temperature anomaly at the bottom for the main global weather models. You probably recognize ECMWF, the European model. We have the Met Office model, Meteo France, and so forth. And there is a strong signal for heat. So at the bottom, you see the orange, yellow, and red, and that means temperatures above average. The strongest signal is in the southwestern part of Europe, and almost all of the models are in agreement here. Precipitation-wise, a bit more of a mixed bag. We have a slight wet signal for Southern Europe and more of a dry trend, dry signal for Northern Europe. So now we looked at all our different pieces of the forecast puzzle, and we have come up with our StormGeo forecast for the next 3 months and then also into the autumn season. And it looks like this. So for the rest of June, almost just a week left now for the Nordic, we're going towards a weather pattern change. We're already seeing it. It's raining in Oslo here today. We're moving in towards more changeable weather and near normal to slightly wet overall this last week. And temperatures are starting to decrease, but it's been a very warm start to the month. So temperatures will still be slightly above average for the time of year. For the Conti region, high pressure building, and we do anticipate temperatures to continue to increase here over the next week with mainly dry conditions for big parts of the region. Moving into July, the Nordic, around normal precipitation and temperatures slightly above average. And for the Conti, warm and dry with high chances of heat waves. And with that can come prolonged periods of dryness as well. And heat waves, of course, are different based on where you are, but what it generally means is a prolonged period of temperatures well above average. And moving into August, so last summer month, for the Conti region, we do believe that these prolonged periods of warmth and heat will continue with slightly dry signal over Central Europe. And for the Nordic, this is a very uncertain forecast, but perhaps a weak signal for warmer than average and precipitation near normal. And then finally, a quick overview of the entire autumn season. And this is, several months out. It's very uncertain, but we do believe for the Nordic that it's going to be very changeable with a lot of different weather patterns, right? But overall, slightly mild during the entire period. And at least in November, perhaps a bit of a wetter than normal signal. And for the Conti region, this dry and warm setup will probably continue in towards the early part of the autumn as well, and then becoming more wet over Central Europe from October, while the temperature will still perhaps be slightly above average. So that is the first section of this, looking at weather, and I'm going to hand it over now to my colleague Sigurd, who will take it from here. And we're in the same room, so we're going to do a bit of a seat change.
Thank you, Maria, and hello to everyone out there. I'm going to talk today about the fuels markets and the German power market. The section today will contain a view on coal, gas, and Asia, state of things in Europe before entering July, and finally a look at the German curve price impact from the weather just presented by Maria. I'm going to start giving away our conclusion or our take on the coal gas market. And I will later try to tell you why we come up with this. At the moment, China, very supportive to both coal and gas prices. And in our view, this limits a further downturn in both fuels the next coming months at least. A look at how the coal and gas in Europe, how the settlement front month contracts have developed the past year. No surprise, it's been very downhill slope since the war impacts hit most in June, July of 2022. At the moment, both coal and gas prices are even below levels we saw in mid 2021. And this was before China started to raise their voice and concern about high global coal and gas prices. So why this steep downhill slope and why the actual levels today? Well, obviously war impacts as starting to wear off a bit. The market finds its way around. New structural changes in freight and such, and with this also generally low activity in Europe and throughout. So then, standing here, is there any further downturn potential? I'm going to leave or let that question hang for a little bit, and I'll come back to that in a few slides. Just a brief view on the Atlantic and Pacific basins, how they are priced in relevance to each other. Coal prices now quite close to each other in Atlantic and Pacific, and with the current low difference, there is no premium or signals of sending any coal from Europe into Asia when you take into consideration the current freight costs. The gas markets are in balance at the moment. In Europe, gas throughout September is much cheaper than using coal in power. In Asia, or maybe China specific, coal is cheaper than gas, and it seems to be the picture now looking at the curve ahead. A small heads up there, past week we saw actually gas prices down, and generation cost of coal and gas in China were actually level. China, we have to look at China, as it has been, at least in our view, the past couple of years. Record high power production to date this year. First 5 months observations, very, very strong. Same goes for the Chinese coal production. It has been a record high to date, but there's one small information that I would like to share, and that is in May, the daily coal production actually is down on month. It's actually the daily coal production is actually at the lowest since the 7 past months, except for January, I must say. But January in China is a very, very heavy public holiday month and generally very low activity. Coal imports into China, record high. And the past 3 months, it has been significantly up already from observed high levels the past 8-10 months. And the reason to that we see as obvious. It's a pricing issue. Global prices has come down. The prices are much more acceptable now for China, and they do import coal at a strong level, and they will do that for the remainder of the year, unless the coal prices should start spiking again. China has the ability to do this, flexing between imports or self-domestic coal production. As an example, during the past 12 months, the Chinese coal production has varied 50 million tons. And 50 million tons, that is 4 times the combined monthly export out of US, Colombia, and South Africa. It is roughly the same level as 1 month's export from the biggest coal exporter, Indonesia. So, oh, there it came down by accident, but nevertheless, sorry, lost it a bit there, but yes, significant flexibility from China. And China and Beijing, they kind of, in our view, runs the global coal market at the moment. If the prices do get acceptable, they will import. If they do, they have huge flexibility in their own coal production. So back to the hanging question, any further downturn potential? We say it is very limited, and this is due to the general fuel demand. The price level in itself at the moment, acceptable for China, even India. So the price level itself is supportive. And if the coal prices in Atlantic or even the gas prices in Atlantic would drop further from now, we will see more ships heading for Asia quite promptly. This will go until next time Beijing make a political decision in either direction. Then, state of things for entering July in the power market. Again, I will share our key takeaways. To start with, slow recovery in German consumption also throughout Europe. We have strong fuel stocks, both gas and coal in Europe. We have a decent hydrological situation and much better than last year. There will be a dominance, at least in Germany, of flexible gas production. In a normal weather scenario, if that would happen throughout the summer, coal burning power in Europe would be very, very low. Also this year, we have quite low generation cost spread. I will get back to that. Monthly consumption displayed in Germany. This year, we see another 2% drop in consumption based on up to April, May actual figures and our forecast for the remainder of the year. Prior year, 3% down year on year. The upturn seems to be quite slow. And just recently now, before this presentation, I got the May figures for steel production throughout Europe. And January through May, steel production is down more than 10% in Europe. One of the big energy consumers in Europe. We will likely not hit pre-COVID levels, at least within a year or not maybe for years. Conclusion on German consumption, 2023 estimate, down 12 terawatt hours on the year. As mentioned, coal stocks and gas stocks in Europe, quite decent for the season, but a few heads up, I would say. Anyway, gas level quite decent, as said, but net injection the past couple of weeks has been low, and it has actually been in the lower range of the past 6 years. ARA stocks, as you can see, down the past weeks. Precipitation and reservoir, a light version of hydrology, at least much better entry than we had last year. A bit on the negative side in CE, continental Europe, or the Alps region, combined Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and France. We have a deficit in southeast corner of Europe, Italy, displayed here, but they've had a nice recovery in the past few weeks. Same as Spain. It looked kind of bad for a while, but now we have had a very good recovery the past few weeks, and at time of writing or this date, somewhat above normal precipitation. When it comes to the Rhine River, we are much better off than last year. Our forecast throughout August, at the moment, around or modestly below the historical average. Last year, we had a situation that was much worse than we foresee for the remainder of this summer this year. Also, Alps region reservoir content, nothing much to say, but decent. This year, the merit order in the supply in Germany has changed. Last year, lignite, coal, CCGT. Today, CCGT, lignite, coal. That is one observation. A second important observation is that we this year have a very broad supply represented by the availability of thermal units of 32 gigawatt hours that are close to each other when it comes to cost. A wide base supply with only 17 euro difference in reference plant generation cost. This is completely different from last year, where we had gas extremely higher price than both lignite and hard coal. So finally, a look at the price development the coming months. Again, our conclusion to start with, if the weather turns out as Maria presented, we see July and August up 3 to 7 euros compared to our base price scenario today. But this is with market fuels as they are today, and we could discuss or argue that if we end up with a very hot July and August, the coal and more likely maybe gas would come up on that. But with given or the market fuels used, a 3 to 7 upside potential. Further out, minor changes and or impact, if anything, whether modestly bearish on our price expectations. This is the scenario distribution that we get from our meteorologist. And for July, the heaviest weighted year, 2006, 11%, turned out at that time 4.1 degrees above the seasonal average. In August, not so strong single years. 2003 with 8.5% at 3.5 degrees, and 2018 with 2 degrees above normal. So again, July up 3 to 7 euros in the presented weather scenario. August up 3 to 5. Coal utilization in a normal scenario will be very low, as I mentioned earlier this summer. If we end up with the 2006 scenario, 4 degrees above normal, coal will be employed if the heat seems to last for longer periods. If it will be very concentrated heat, we will likely see more spiking prices and not so much coal being employed. Further out, as mentioned, more uncertainty and less impact from the weather scenario. Again, a small downside, more probable for the remainder of the year past August. And again, we have used market prices on fuels. And that actually concludes my part of this webinar. And then I will hand over to my colleague, Sigbjørn.
Thank you, Sigurd. Then we move over to the Nordic power market with some key figures, outlooks for the rest of 2023. Okay, so sort of a snapshot of where we come from, where we are right now, where we are heading in the medium term. We see the energy balance for the years 2021 until 2024, and the Swiss price also there below. So we see we come from a 2021 with high, let's say high electricity consumption at around 398 terawatt hours. The Nordic region then had a production surplus of 22 terawatt hours, net export of 22 terawatt hours, and a system price of 62. So if we jump to 2023, we see that consumption has decreased very significantly, seems to end up around 372 terawatt hours this year. The production surplus in the Nordic region has grown substantially, around or above 50 terawatt hours production surplus this year. Obviously due to the decrease in consumption combined with fast growing wind solar power production, and also the commissioning of Olkiluoto 3 nuclear power plant in Finland. The Swiss price seems to end around 68 euros per megawatt this year. What about next year? Wind solar power growing fast also next year. Nuclear power even higher next year with Olkiluoto 3 in production the whole year, except March next year when it has the yearly maintenance. Consumption is an uncertain factor. We assume that we will very soon enter a period with electricity consumption growth again, but as I said, uncertain factor. We end up with another record production surplus next year at expectedly around 52 terawatt hours. The system price forecast is around 65. So what we are seeing in the Nordic region as we speak is that supply side is expanding fast. You know, wind solar power investments are still at a high level, and consumption is very low. You know, I think it's worth mentioning that 15 years back or 16 years back in 2007, we saw Nordic electricity consumption at 398 terawatt hours. So you know, it's a sort of general understanding now that we are entering a long period with very significant electricity consumption growth as sort of a natural part of the green shift, but that is not what we are seeing right now. So that will be interesting to follow. I would also like to mention that supply side growth is at the biggest in SE1, SE2 Finland, where you already now have a production surplus, and that production surplus might become too big rather soon, and the consequence of that would be a period of very, very low electricity prices in SE1, SE2 and Finland. We'll come shortly back to that later. So here we have a list of wind power in Finland under construction or with the FID. So that is currently around 11 terawatt hours, 3.4 gigawatts. This is new production that will come into to production during until first part of 2025. We also have a fairly extensive list in Sweden. You know, this list also contains 2 projects in Norway, altogether some 7.6 terawatt hours, approximately 2.5 gigawatts. In addition, we see now quite a lot of solar power investment. So for sure we can say that production in the Nordic region will increase significantly still the next few years, 20 terawatt hours at the least, in a market with already a very big production surplus. So the conclusion from that is that, you know, we have to see consumption growth going forward, or otherwise the production surplus will be too big and prices will become very low. And at least we have to see now that we see a slowdown in FID's final investment decisions. And that is, I would say, in particular the case for Finland, where the biggest changes are happening. You know, Finland has turned from a high price area. It's been a high price area for decades. Big net electricity importer, quite recently turned to net electricity exporter, and the Finnish area price now at the negative below system price, significantly below system price due to the rapid growth in wind solar power and Olkiluoto 3, and obviously also the low consumption. I think again it's worth mentioning that back in 2007, electricity consumption was around 90 terawatt hours in Finland, whereas if we look at levels right now, it corresponds to approximately 77 terawatt hours per year. So a very significant decrease in electricity consumption in Finland. And quite recently, we have seen news in the media about further closures in the pulp and paper business. So for Finland, I would say we are on a fast track towards too big production surplus and a period of very, very low electricity prices. So either we have to see that consumption starts picking up very, very soon, or we have to see a full stop to FIDs in Finland. Just a quick comment on something I got from I found in a Fingrid report, where they present their expected wind and solar power capacity growth until 2030, which are quite massive. You know, that adds around another 75 terawatt hours of electricity production in Finland. You know, they during these few years they add more or less the same as Finland is consuming today. So in our as we see it, or we model it, if we should assume such wind solar power growth to happen, it for sure means extremely low electricity prices in Finland. I would say many years with around or below 20 euros per megawatt hour. Yeah. All right. If you look more near term, we have this scenario-based system price forecast, where we run 25 different hydrological scenarios. Each scenario gives a system price outcome. We can either say that all these 25 scenarios have the same equal probability, or we can apply a probability distribution that is developed or derived by the StormGeo energy meteorologists. So to the far right, you see the StormGeo probability distribution. If we assume even probability distribution over all the scenarios, we have a system price forecast of 58.6 for July, which is slightly above the current market price. If we applied StormGeo probability distribution, we end up with 62.6 euros per megawatt hour. So the StormGeo probability distribution is biased slightly towards warm, dry July, not very significantly, but slightly, and it has a modest impact on the price expectation if that probability distribution should turn out to be correct. If you look at August, it's basically the same situation. You know, we have with the even probability of scenarios, we have a 62.8 euro per megawatt hour price forecast for August. Applying the StormGeo distribution, it ends up at 64.6. So marginally drier, warmer, less windy August in the StormGeo probability distribution impacts prices modestly. And basically it's the same for September. Slightly drier, warmer, less windy weather, more likely in September as well. You know, you have the 63 euros per megawatt hour price forecast with the even probability distribution, and the 66 euros per megawatt hour price forecast with the StormGeo probability distribution. So for all month of September, StormGeo probability distributions indicates slightly higher prices on the dry, warm side. For Q3, obviously the conclusion then is the same, and it gives a price forecast in our model which is around the level found on at the Nasdaq futures market. If you look at the October, it is more of the same, I would say. We have the system price forecast at 65.3 as an average for all the 25 hydrological scenarios. Applying the StormGeo probability distribution gives a price forecast at 66.1, so quite marginally price impact for October. November, the situation turns. Now applying the StormGeo probability distribution provides a slightly lower system price forecast at 69.8 compared to 72.5 if we assume all hydrological scenarios having the same probability. So that means as StormGeo sees it, November likely a bit on the wet warm side and with slightly higher wind power production as well. For December, it is I would say very little impact, no significant weather signal for December. The even probability distribution provides 78.5 and the StormGeo probability distribution 74.5, so quite marginally on, say, on the warmer, windier side, but very, very marginal. And in sum for Q4, then the impact from the StormGeo probability distribution is quite marginal. You know, both approaches give a price expectation in our model around 71 euros per megawatt hour. So compared to the Nasdaq futures market, that is some 10%, 10 to 12%, I guess, below market price level. So quite in agreement with the futures market for Q3 right now, a bit bearish for Q4 now. Okay, just a quick comment on the hydrological situation in the Nordic region. When we look 2 weeks ahead, that means taking the latest EC 14-day weather forecast into account. We have a hydrological balance, or HPR, hydropower resource, at around -8 to -9 terawatt hours. You know, and -4 terawatt hours in Norway, -4 in Sweden, and a marginal deficit also in Finland. In southern Norway, the situation is quite different this year compared to last year. The green line here is the water reservoir curve up until now, and with a forecast for the rest of the year. And the blue is last year, so it shows that we are significantly better off in southern Norway this year compared to last year. And when we look at SE1, SE2, northern part of Sweden, we see that also this year is very different from last year. The green line is this year with a lower water reservoir filling during the winter, and also expectedly for the rest of the year, compared to the blue line last year, where we had around 90% reservoir filling in SE1, SE2 combined. Yes, I guess that was mid-August or something last year. So and obviously this has impact on the EPADs. SYS and EPAD price prognosis for Q3 and Q4. Basically, we forecast lower EPADs compared to Nasdaq EPADs for both Q3 and Q4. I guess that is with acceptance of Finland, where we see Finland even lower than indicated by the Nasdaq EPAD market. For Q3, we see Finland in line with SE1, SE2, but at the same time we don't expect SE1, SE2 to clear quite as low for Q3 and for Q4 as is indicated by the Nasdaq EPADs. And for sure that is related to the or a function of the water reservoir curve we just recently observed, with a much lower water reservoir content this year, and less production pressure in the hydropower system in SE1, SE2, and then for the southern part of Norway, NO1, NO2, NO5, obviously the prices will still be significantly impacted by the price level in UK, the Netherlands, Germany, but not quite as much impacted as indicated by the Nasdaq EPADs. All right, so that was all from us.
All right, it's now time for the Q&A session. You can send your questions using the Q&A tab in the control panel. So Maria, Sigbjørn, and Sigurd are here to answer them. And let's see. Okay, first question. 2022 was a record year in terms of price difference between different hours within the same day, at least in SE3, and probably many other regions. 2023 has started out with lower variation, but is your view for winter? What is your view for winter 2023-24 and beyond?
So was that related to, it was Nordic Power, I guess?
SE3.
SE3, yeah, sure. Okay, you know, the record high price difference between the peaks or the maximum prices and the minimum prices within the day in SE3 obviously was related to the extreme high price level last year. You know, the record high prices for natural gas, coal, everything, and correspondingly high electricity prices in all European electricity markets, and then it's natural that, you know, the price variation also becomes record high, and with decreasing coal prices, natural gas prices, lower marginal cost, lower spot prices in continental Europe, that price difference decrease for sure. So that's the main factor. So I guess the absolute level difference between the maximum hours and minimum priced hours during the day is also for the time to come, first and foremost, a function of the price level for, or the short-term margin cost for coal and gas. But the general trend, obviously, is that, you know, we are just adding more and more intermittent production capacity everywhere, which, other things equal, indicates bigger price differences within the day.
Thank you. We have one more question about the weather. Can you say anything about the forecast for upcoming winter?
I wish. It's a bit too far ahead in time now, but we'll start looking at that already in the next few months. And then by early November, when we have our Nena Energy Day, we'll give you a presentation specifically focused on that. But over the next few months, we'll have a bit of an idea, at least.
Thank you, Maria. And can you say something about the wind forecast for the next 3 months?
Yeah, so that's extremely difficult to do long-range forecasting on wind specifically. You can measure it in many different ways, right? The absolute value or the average over a period of time. And with low pressure systems, of course, higher wind, high pressure tend to have a lot weaker winds. So that's something we more focus on the short to mid-term forecast. But looking at it now, nothing really sticks out in terms of wind over the next 3 months. But at the same time, one deep low pressure can completely change that. So it's important there to keep an eye on the short to medium range forecasting.
But as an average, based on the StormGeo medium-term weather forecast, you should expect wind power production in the Nordic region slightly below average levels.
Thank you. One more question. Any views on how the development of the NO2 and NO1 will develop in the rest of 2023 versus system price? So that's for Nordic.
Yeah, they will remain high price areas, definitely going forward. You know, the hydrological balance is relatively stronger in NO1 compared to NO2. So NO1 will be priced lower than NO2 also going forward.
Thank you.
And the level, you know, for Q3, Q4 was in the presentation.
Thank you. Any chance for a collapse in gas prices late fall, as we experienced last year?
Good question. I wouldn't rule it out, but I would say it's much less likely than last year. And then one of the major reasons for that is that gas all the way through September is much cheaper to use in power than coal. So that picture was completely different last year. So yes, again, I wouldn't rule it out, but I would see the chances for that happening again this year as fairly slim.
And another, just to add on that, you know, with natural gas reservoirs full from, say, October or something, you know, there is always a chance of short-term price crashes. You know, if storage capacities are fully utilized, there is always a short-term potential downside.
Yeah, we have one more question to Sigrun. What do you think about the impact of Viking Link coming up January 2024?
Yeah, obviously that will be an export cable. The flows will be from DK1 to UK, and other things equal, bullish both for the DK1 price and for the system price. Mainly for the DK1 price. So the impact is noticeable for sure. As well, yeah.
Thank you. One more question. Is NO2 power more exposed to fossil fuel price spikes due to interconnectors to UK and Germany?
Yes, obviously, it has all the sea cables to DK1, Germany, Netherlands, UK. So obviously you see, and all these are electricity markets which you basically see spot prices clearing at short marginal cost of coal or gas or lignite, or so you see this NO2 impacted from that quite often, for sure.
Okay, thank you. And a question about the chance for major cooling issues this year in France and Germany.
Well, there's always a risk if we get long-lasting heating periods. For now, into July, I would say the risk is close to nothing. We will see a peak in temperatures, but it will drop next week, and we will see and we do see some heavy rainfall in France, for instance, these days. So the opportunity or the chances for that, at least compared to last year, is a lot lower.
And are we expecting any negative prices this summer?
Yes, you will always have some negative prices. I think we actually forecast negative prices this coming Monday already. That's on decent solar and half decent wind, and that's what we need in order to get negative prices, at least during working days. Further out, if the warm and medium dry scenario materializes as Maria presented, then probably wind will be in, at least the chances are that it will be a modest wind. And then again, if you don't get a bit of a wind and then the good solar during working days at least, you will not get any negative prices.
Thank you. One more question to Sigbjørn. Why do you think we see so much wind power investments in Finland?
Yeah, I guess it's in a way easier to build wind power in Finland at least compared to southern parts of Sweden, the entire Norway, and also in Denmark. There are obviously less conflicts of interests regarding onshore wind power in Finland. That one thing, and I think if you look at market price expectation, it's still inviting FIDs in Finland. With the market paying above 40 euros per megawatt hour long-term Finnish power. That is around the lower marginal cost for new onshore wind power. So I guess it makes sense for investors. If you have a project, fairly decent project, it offers a fair profitability. So as long as that is the case, we will see FIDs. I guess the thing is that in our model we see that when we do not allow much more wind power in Finland now, because then the profitability disappears very quickly. So I guess that is the interesting thing to follow now. Will we see a development in Finland as we saw in SE1, SE2, where you just saw the build out of onshore wind power becoming too big, the price areas became saturated and prices decreased very much. We are very close to see the same in Finland.
Thank you very much for your questions and answers. We will go with the last one. Do you see any signs of electricity consumption growth in the Nordic region?
I would say no, not at all. Yeah, if anything, I would say that it's still marginally decreasing. So yeah, I think we are now, if you look at consumption here and now, it corresponds to an annual level in the Nordic region below 370 terawatt hours, which is very, very low. And yes, and yeah, no signs of any increase so far, I would say.
Thank you. And thank you very much for your time. If you have any further questions after the webinar, please feel free to reach out to us at nena@stormgeo.com. And have a great day. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.